I never thought I'd find myself in a situation like this, writing on a subreddit for advice about a marriage that's gone completely off the rails. But here I am, needing to vent and maybe find some clarity in the chaos. I've been married to Jennifer for 5 years now. We don't have kids, and in a way, I'm thankful for that, given everything that's happened. Things weren't always bad between us. We used to be happy, or at least I thought we were. But lately, it feels like everything has been falling apart. Jennifer's behavior started to change a few months ago. She began taking more frequent trips, often claiming she needed to get out of the house, clear her head, or run errands. At first, I didn't think much of it. I mean, we all need some space, right? But then I started noticing something odd. Every time she went out, she'd come back in an Uber or a taxi, and it was always the same guy driving her. I didn't want to be that paranoid husband, but the more I saw it, the more it ate away at me. Why was she always with the same driver? Was it just a coincidence, or was there something more going on? I asked her about it once, and she brushed it off, saying it was just the luck of the draw. But there was something in her tone, something dismissive and almost condescending, that made me doubt her. Then there was the night when things really started to unravel. Jennifer had gone out again, claiming she needed to pick up some things for a work project. I decided to stay home, figuring I'd catch up on some much-needed rest. But sleep didn't come easy that night. I kept thinking about her, about the way she'd been acting lately. The nagging feeling in the pit of my stomach wouldn't go away. So, I did something I never thought I'd do. I ordered an Uber. I didn't need to go anywhere, but I wanted to see if I'd get the same driver she always did. Sure enough, when the car pulled up, it was him. The same guy who'd been driving Jennifer around for weeks. I decided to strike up a conversation with him, see if I could get a read on him. He seemed friendly enough, but there was something off about the way he kept glancing at me in the rearview mirror, like he was sizing me up or something. I asked him if he drove in this area a lot, trying to sound casual. He said he did, and that he had a lot of regular clients. When I asked him if he knew Jennifer, his expression changed for just a fraction of a second before he said he didn't know anyone by that name. That was enough to raise my suspicion even more. I didn't say anything else for the rest of the ride. Just let him drop me off a few blocks from home. I watched as he drove away, my mind racing with a million thoughts. When I got back to the house, I waited until Jennifer was asleep, and then I did something I never thought I'd have to do. I slipped out of bed and went to the computer, searching for ways to retrieve footage from a car's video recorder. I'd seen a dash cam in the driver's car earlier, and I needed to know if my suspicions were right. It took me a while, but I finally managed to get a hold of the footage, and what I saw made my blood run cold. There she was, my wife, in the back seat of that car, doing things I never thought I'd see her do with another man, no less. I knew then that my life was about to change, and not in a good way. This was just the beginning, but I had no idea how deep this betrayal would go, or how far I'd be willing to go to make her pay. I couldn't sleep after watching that video. My mind was racing, heart pounding in my chest as I replayed the images over and over again. Jennifer, my wife, was cheating on me with a fucking taxi driver. The whole thing felt surreal, like I was stuck in some nightmare I couldn't wake up from. I wanted to confront her right then and there, shake her awake and demand answers, but I knew it wasn't the time. I needed to keep my cool, gather more information, and most importantly, plan my next move. The next morning, Jennifer acted like everything was perfectly normal. She kissed me goodbye, heading off to work with that same smile she always wore. It took everything in me to not scream at her, to not let on that I knew. Instead, I plastered on a fake smile and told her to have a good day. As soon as she left, I got to work. I needed to find out how long this had been going on, how deep her lies ran. I spent hours going through her phone records, bank statements, and anything else I could get my hands on. It didn't take long before I started finding inconsistencies. Charges to her car to places she never mentioned visiting, calls to numbers I didn't recognize, and texts that had been suspiciously deleted. The worst part was how brazen she had been about it. She wasn't even trying to hide it anymore. I guess she thought I was too stupid or too trusting to ever figure it out. Well, she was wrong. I'd figured it out. And now it was just a matter of what I was going to do with that information. That night, I decided to confront her. I wasn't going to wait any longer, letting her play me for a fool. I ordered another Uber, and sure enough, it was the same guy. I didn't even bother making small talk this time. I just asked him to drive me around until I said stop. He seemed nervous, probably sensing that something was off, but he did as I asked. As we drove, I pulled out my phone and started recording. I needed to get everything on tape to make sure I had proof in case this ended up in court. We didn't drive far before I spotted Jennifer walking out of a bar, laughing and chatting with a friend. I told the driver to pull over, and that's when things took a turn I hadn't expected. As soon as she saw the car, her expression changed. She froze, her eyes narrowing as she recognized the driver and then me sitting in the back seat. For a moment, I thought she might try to run, but then she squared her shoulders and marched over to the car, her face twisted in anger. "What the hell are you doing here?" she hissed, yanking the door open. "Are you following me now?" I stared at her, trying to keep my voice steady. "I could ask you the same thing. How long has this been going on, Jennifer?" She sneered at me, not even bothering to hide her contempt. "What are you talking about? You're being paranoid again." I held up my phone, showing her the footage I'd taken from the dash cam. "You're going to tell me this is paranoia? I saw you, Jennifer. I know everything." For a second, she looked genuinely shocked, like she hadn't expected me to find out. But then she recovered, her face hardening. "So what if I did? You're such a loser, always working late and never paying attention to me. I had needs, and you sure as hell weren't meeting them." I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. The woman standing in front of me wasn't the Jennifer I'd married. This was someone else, someone I didn't recognize at all. "So, you just decided to fuck around with a cab driver? That's how you solve our problems?" She laughed, a harsh, bitter sound that made my skin crawl. "You're such a child, always trying to play the victim. Maybe if you'd been more of a man, I wouldn't have had to look elsewhere." I couldn't take it anymore. I shoved the door open, getting out of the car and standing toe-to-toe with her. "I'm done with you, Jennifer. This marriage is over." For a moment, I thought she might back down, but instead, she just rolled her eyes. "Fine. Good luck finding someone else who'll put up with your bullshit." With that, she turned on her heel and walked away, leaving me standing there, feeling like the world had just been ripped out from under me. I watched her go, the realization hitting me hard. This wasn't just a betrayal. It was a complete destruction of everything I thought we had. But I wasn't going to let her get away with it that easily. She wanted to play dirty? Fine. I could play dirty too. And that's when I started thinking about her mom. Yeah, maybe it was a twisted thought, but at that moment I didn't care. I wanted to hurt her as much as she'd hurt me, and I knew exactly how to do it. As the driver finally pulled away, I sat back in the seat, already planning my next move. This was far from over. In fact, it was just beginning. After that confrontation with Jennifer, I knew things were only going to get uglier. But I wasn't prepared for just how quickly everything would spiral out of control. She moved out the next day, not even bothering to hide her contempt for me. I found out later that she'd been planning it for weeks, probably waiting for the right moment to spring her exit on me. The only thing that had thrown her off was me discovering her affairs sooner than she expected. But she wasn't gone for good. Oh no, she kept popping up in my life like a bad penny. She started showing up at the house to collect her things, which was just an excuse to snoop around and try to provoke me. She'd smirk at me, flaunting her new life like it was the greatest thing in the world. I couldn't stand it. One day, she waltzed in with that same Uber driver, the asshole who'd been screwing her behind my back. They acted like they owned the place, laughing and talking like I wasn't even there. I tried to ignore them, but it was impossible. The way they were together, so comfortable and at ease, made my blood boil. I knew I had to get out of the house before I did something I'd regret. I told Jennifer she had 10 minutes to grab whatever she needed and leave, but she just laughed in my face. "You can't tell me what to do," she sneered. "This is still my house too." That's when I lost it. I stormed out, slamming the door behind me, and started walking aimlessly down the street. I didn't care where I went, I just needed to get away. My mind was a whirlwind of anger, betrayal, and a dark, vengeful desire. I couldn't let her win. I couldn't let her think she could destroy me and walk away unscathed. And that's when the idea came to me. Her mom, Jennifer, and her mom, Marlene, had always been close. They were practically best friends, always gossiping and spending time together. I knew Jennifer idolized her mother, and the thought of me getting involved with Marlene would drive her insane. It was the perfect revenge. So I started putting my plan into action. I knew Marlene liked to go to this one coffee shop downtown, so I made it a point to start going there too. It didn't take long before I ran into her. She was surprised to see me, of course, but we chatted for a bit, and I could tell she was curious about why I was there. Over the next few days, I made sure to accidentally bump into her a few more times. We'd talk for longer each time, and I could see her warming up to me. She was a lonely woman, always complaining about her husband being distant, and I played right into that. I listened, sympathized, and made her feel like she was the most important person in the world. It didn't take long before we were having lunch together, and then dinner. I knew I was getting to her, and it was only a matter of time before things went further. I didn't care about Marlene, not really. She was just a pawn in my game, a way to get back at Jennifer in the most personal way possible. Then one night it happened. We were at her place having a few drinks, and one thing led to another. I didn't feel guilty about it. In fact, I felt a twisted sense of satisfaction. I could only imagine how Jennifer would react when she found out. And find out she would, because I made sure to leave a few subtle clues, enough for her to piece it together. It didn't take long for Jennifer to find out about Marlene and me. I knew it would eat at her, that she wouldn't be able to resist snooping around and digging for information. And sure enough, one day, she showed up at my door, her face flushed with anger. "You sick bastard," she screamed as soon as I opened the door. "How could you do this? To my mother, of all people?" I leaned against the doorframe, trying to look as nonchalant as possible. "What's the matter, Jennifer? You're the one who wanted to end things. I'm just moving on, just like you did." "You don't get it, do you?" she hissed, stepping closer. "This isn't about us anymore. This is about you being a disgusting piece of shit who's trying to ruin my life." I couldn't help but laugh. "Ruin your life? You did that all on your own. I'm just making sure you feel some of the pain you put me through." She was trembling with rage now, and I could tell she was on the verge of losing control. "You think you're so clever, don't you? You think you've won, but you have no idea what you're getting yourself into." That caught me off guard. There was something in her voice, something that made me wonder if I'd underestimated her. "What's that supposed to mean?" "You'll find out soon enough," she spat, turning on her heel and storming off. I watched her go, a sense of unease settling in the pit of my stomach. I'd wanted to hurt her, to make her suffer, but now I was starting to wonder if I'd pushed her too far. Jennifer was unpredictable, and I had no idea what she might do next. The next few days were tense, to say the least. Jennifer didn't show up at the house again, and I didn't hear from Marlene either. I knew I should be relieved, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something was brewing, something that was going to explode in my face. Then, one evening, I got a call from an unknown number. I hesitated before answering, but something told me I needed to take it. "Hello," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "You're in deep shit, buddy," a gruff voice on the other end said. "You think you can mess with people's lives and not face any consequences?" I felt a chill run down my spine. "Who is this?" "Doesn't matter," the voice replied. "Just know that Jennifer's not the only one you've pissed off. You've made some enemies, and they're coming for you." Before I could respond, the line went dead. I stared at my phone, a sense of dread washing over me. This was bad, really bad. I'd let my anger and need for revenge cloud my judgment, and now it was coming back to bite me. I knew I had to get out of town, at least for a while. But where could I go? I didn't have many friends left, thanks to Jennifer's constant lies and manipulation. And with that mysterious threat hanging over my head, I didn't know who I could trust. I decided to pack a bag and lay low for a few days, maybe head to a motel on the outskirts of town. But as I was throwing some clothes into a suitcase, there was a loud knock at the door. My heart nearly stopped. Whoever it was, they weren't there to talk. I grabbed my phone and dialed 911, but before I could hit send, the door burst open and two men barged in. They were big, rough-looking guys, the kind you didn't want to mess with. One of them grabbed me by the collar and slammed me against the wall. "Where do you think you're going?" he growled. "I don't know what you're talking about," I stammered, trying to keep my voice steady. The other guy laughed, a cold, menacing sound. "You thought you could mess around with people's lives and just walk away? Think again." Before I could react, the first guy punched me in the stomach, knocking the wind out of me. I doubled over, gasping for air, but they weren't done. They kept at it, beating me until I was barely conscious, pain radiating from every part of my body. Finally, they stepped back, leaving me crumpled on the floor. "Let this be a lesson," one of them said as they walked out the door. "Next time, you won't be so lucky." I don't know how long I lay there, drifting in and out of consciousness. All I could think about was how badly I'd fucked up, how my need for revenge had led me down this dark, twisted path. I'd lost everything, my wife, my dignity, and now, even my sense of safety. Eventually, I managed to drag myself to the phone and call an ambulance. The paramedics arrived quickly, and before I knew it, I was in the hospital being treated for my injuries. The doctor said I was lucky to be alive, but I didn't feel lucky. I felt like a broken man, beaten down by my own mistakes. Jennifer never showed up at the hospital. I didn't expect her to, but it still hurt. We may have been at each other's throats, but we'd once been in love. Now, all that was left was bitterness and resentment. It took a few weeks for me to recover physically, but the emotional scars ran deeper. I couldn't sleep, couldn't eat, couldn't shake the fear that those guys would come back to finish the job. I knew I needed to get out of town, but I didn't have the strength or the will to move. That's when Marlene showed up. I hadn't seen her since the night we slept together, and I wasn't sure how to feel about seeing her again. Part of me was ashamed, knowing that I'd used her to get back at Jennifer. But another part of me felt a strange sense of relief. Maybe she was the only one who could help me now. She walked into the hospital room, her face a mix of concern and something else I couldn't quite place. "What the hell happened to you?" she asked, sitting down beside the bed. I tried to smile, but it hurt too much. I guess I pissed off the wrong people. Marlene shook her head, reaching out to take my hand. I heard about what happened with Jennifer. She told me everything. I tensed, expecting her to be angry, but instead, she just looked sad. "I don't know what I was thinking, Marlene. I let my anger get the best of me." She sighed, squeezing my hand. "You're not the only one who's angry. Jennifer's been playing everyone, not just you. She's been telling lies, manipulating people. Hell, she even tried to turn me against you." I blinked, surprised by her words. "What do you mean?" Marlene looked away, biting her lip. "She said you were abusive, that you were cheating on her, and that she was just trying to protect herself." I didn't believe her at first, but then, well, she can be very convincing. The weight of everything came crashing down on me. Jennifer had been weaving her web of lies for longer than I'd realized. She wasn't just cheating on me. She was actively trying to destroy my reputation, to make me out as the bad guy in all of this. "What am I supposed to do now?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Marlene looked at me, her eyes filled with something close to pity. "You need to get away from here, start fresh somewhere else. I know it's hard, but staying here will only make things worse." She was right. I knew she was right. But the thought of leaving everything behind, of running away like a coward, made me feel sick to my stomach. "And what about you? What happens to us?" Marlene smiled faintly, but there was sadness in her eyes. "We both know this was never meant to be anything more than what it was. We were both hurt, and we used each other to feel better. But it's time to move on." I nodded, even though it hurt to hear her say it. Deep down, I knew she was right. We were both just casualties in Jennifer's twisted game, and there was no future for us in the wreckage she'd left behind. I took Marlene's advice to heart. As soon as I was discharged from the hospital, I started making plans to leave town. I sold the house, packed up what little I had left, and said my goodbyes to the few people who still mattered to me. It wasn't easy, but I knew it was the only way to escape the nightmare my life had become. Jennifer didn't try to stop me. In fact, she didn't even acknowledge my departure. It was like I didn't exist to her anymore, like I was just a ghost she'd already forgotten. But that was fine by me. I was done with her, done with all of it. I moved to a small town a few states away, a place where no one knew me or my past. It was a fresh start, a chance to rebuild my life from the ground up. I found a job, rented a modest apartment, and tried to put the pieces back together. But no matter how hard I tried, the memories of what happened haunted me. I'd lie awake at night, replaying everything in my mind. The betrayal, the violence, the sheer insanity of it all. It was like a wound that wouldn't heal, a constant reminder of how far I'd fallen. I didn't know if I'd ever be able to move on, to truly forget what Jennifer had done to me. But I wasn't going to let it destroy me. I was stronger than that, stronger than she'd ever given me credit for. And if there was one thing I'd learned from all of this, it was that I couldn't let my anger control me. I had to be smarter, more careful, and above all, I had to take care of myself. Months passed, and I slowly started to feel like I was getting my life back on track. The nightmares were less frequent, the memories less painful. I was even starting to think about dating again, though the thought of trusting someone after everything that had happened still scared me. Then one day, there was a knock at my door. I wasn't expecting anyone, so I hesitated before answering. When I finally opened it, I was stunned to see Marlene standing there, looking just as surprised as I was. "Marlene, what are you doing here?" I asked, stepping aside to let her in. She looked around nervously, like she was afraid of being seen. "I had to see you. There's something you need to know." My heart started pounding again, that familiar sense of dread creeping back in. "What is it?" Marlene took a deep breath, her hands shaking slightly. "It's about Jennifer. She's not done with you. She's been telling people that you're dangerous, that you're planning something terrible. She's trying to turn everyone against you, to make sure you can't ever come back." I felt a cold chill run down my spine. "Why? Why would she do that?" Marlene shook her head, tears welling up in her eyes. "I don't know. She's lost her mind, I think. She's obsessed with destroying you, with making sure you suffer for the rest of your life. And I'm scared because I don't know what she's capable of anymore." I didn't know what to say. I'd thought I was free, that I'd finally escaped Jennifer's grasp, but now it seemed like she was still pulling the strings, still trying to ruin me from afar. "What do I do?" I asked, my voice trembling. Marlene looked at me with a mix of fear and determination. "You need to fight back. Don't let her win. You're stronger than she is, and you deserve to have your life back." Her words hit me like a ton of bricks. She was right. I couldn't let Jennifer control me anymore. I had to stand up for myself, to show her that I wasn't going to be her victim any longer. That night, I sat down and started thinking about how to deal with Jennifer once and for all. I wasn't going to stoop to her level, but I wasn't going to let her keep destroying my life either. I needed to find a way to expose her for who she really was, to show everyone the truth about what she'd done. I started by reaching out to the people she'd been talking to, the ones she'd been trying to turn against me. It wasn't easy, but I managed to track down a few of them and explain my side of the story. Some of them were skeptical at first, but once I showed them the evidence I had, text messages, emails, even that damning video from the dashcam, they started to see the truth. Word began to spread, and soon enough, Jennifer's lies were unraveling. People who had once believed her started questioning her, and the more they dug, the more they found out just how twisted she really was. It wasn't long before she started losing friends, losing support, and finally, losing her grip on the situation. But I knew that wasn't enough. I needed to make sure she couldn't do this to anyone else, that she couldn't keep ruining lives with her manipulations. So I took things a step further. I compiled all the evidence I had and sent it to a lawyer, explaining everything that had happened. The legal process was long and grueling, but it was necessary. I filed for a restraining order against Jennifer, citing her harassment and the threats she'd made. I also filed a defamation lawsuit, determined to clear my name once and for all. Jennifer fought back, of course. She tried to paint me as the villain, the abusive husband who was trying to destroy her life out of spite. But the evidence was on my side, and the more she tried to defend herself, the more her lies came to light. It was a bitter battle, one that dragged on for months, but in the end, I came out on top. The court granted the restraining order, and Jennifer was ordered to stay away from me. The defamation case was settled in my favor as well, and she was forced to pay damages for the lies she'd spread about me. But it wasn't about the money. It was about getting my life back, about finally putting an end to the nightmare that Jennifer had created. I could finally move on, knowing that she couldn't hurt me anymore. With the legal battle behind me, I started to rebuild my life for real this time. I found a new place to live, started a new job, and even began seeing a therapist to help me work through everything that had happened. It wasn't easy, but I was determined to move forward, to leave the past behind me where it belonged. Marlene and I stayed in touch, though our relationship never returned to what it had been. We both knew that what we'd shared was born out of pain and anger, not love. But we supported each other in our own ways, helping each other heal from the wounds Jennifer had inflicted. As for Jennifer, I heard through the grapevine that she'd moved away, probably to start over somewhere new where people didn't know what she'd done. I didn't care. I was done with her, done with all of it. Months passed, and slowly but surely, I started to feel like myself again. The anger and bitterness that had consumed me for so long began to fade, replaced by a cautious optimism. I was still wary of getting too close to anyone, but I knew that I couldn't live my life in fear. I had to let go of the past if I ever wanted to be truly happy again. One day, I decided to take a leap of faith and signed up for an online dating site. It felt strange putting myself out there after everything I'd been through, but I knew it was time. I needed to move on, to find someone who could help me heal and rebuild my trust in others. To my surprise, I met someone almost right away. Her name was Emily, and she was different from anyone I'd ever met. She was kind, patient, and understanding, everything Jennifer had never been. We started dating, taking things slow, and for the first time in a long time, I felt like I could see a future for myself again. As things with Emily got more serious, I knew I had to close the door on my past once and for all. I needed to find a way to forgive Jennifer, not for her sake, but for mine. I didn't want to carry the weight of that anger and hurt with me any longer. So, I wrote her a letter. I didn't sugarcoat anything. I told her how much she'd hurt me, how much damage she'd done. But I also told her that I was done letting her control my life. I was moving on, and I wished her the best, even though she didn't deserve it. I never heard back from her, and that was fine. The letter wasn't for her. It was for me, and writing it helped me finally let go of the last remnants of the pain she'd caused. With Jennifer behind me, I focused on building a future with Emily. We moved in together, and for the first time in years, I felt like I was truly happy. She knew everything about my past, and she accepted me for who I was, flaws and all. One day, as we were sitting on the couch, Emily turned to me and asked, "Do you think you'll ever forgive her? Really forgive her?" I thought about it for a moment, then nodded. "Yeah, I think I already have. She's not worth holding on to anymore." Emily smiled and took my hand. "I'm glad. You deserve to be happy, you know." I squeezed her hand, feeling a sense of peace wash over me. I am happy, and I'm finally ready to move on. It wasn't easy, but eventually I found peace. The nightmares stopped, the memories faded, and I was finally able to look forward instead of back. Jennifer was just a chapter in my life, one that had ended long ago. I married Emily a year later. It was a small, simple ceremony, just close friends and family. As I stood at the altar, looking into her eyes, I realized that I'd finally found what I'd been searching for all along. Someone who truly loved me for who I was, someone who would stand by me through thick and thin. As we exchanged vows, I felt a sense of closure that I'd never thought possible. Jennifer was gone, but Emily was here, and she was my future. I knew that no matter what happened, I would never let anyone like Jennifer into my life again. I'd learned my lesson, and I was stronger for it. And as we kissed, sealing our vows, I knew that I'd finally found the happiness I deserved. The past was behind me, and the future was bright. And for the first time in a long time, I felt truly at peace.